Well, good morning. Thank you guys so much for coming out early for this first session of South by Southwest 2024. We're really fantastically excited to kick this off on a wonderful topic of sustainability. I am Z. I've had the pleasure of organizing this panel and the rest of the panels that are happening in this room today and tomorrow. I wanted to offer a quick note of thanks before we get started to Advanced Technology International, ATI, who's sponsoring not only this session, but all of the sessions happening in here this weekend. If you haven't seen the program for this weekend, there's a QR code that you can scan on your way out the door in the back. And if you happen to miss anything that you're interested in, because there's so many fantastic things happening at South by Southwest, the recordings will also be up in a few days after the program's over. So with that, I wanted to bring up the panel. So Marta, the stage is yours. Thank you so much.
Yeah. All right. Thanks, C. Yeah, the microphone is on. Thank you so much. And thank you also for ATI for organizing these phenomenal sessions. And of course, to Christopher Zember for having me moderate the first panel of Saturday. Yeah, I saw today that the roads were a little less crowded than yesterday. It's a little too early, right, for a Saturday. So I am Marta Pazos, and I like to start by telling you something about me. So I love podcasts so much that when Sustana, which is a recycling paper company, asked me to be the co-host of their pulp nonfiction podcast, I jumped so fast to it that I didn't even let them take it back. So one of the most fun parts of the podcast is when we were asking our guests to share something that they feel proud of, that they do on their daily lives that contributes to make this world a better place. So I'm going to tell you mine. I have the chance now, because obviously I was not going to ask myself. And that is that I am an advisor. Actually, I was just made a strategic advisor of Regeneration, which is a fund that invests in companies that have circular economy and climate tech innovation at the core and center of their businesses. So I get to use my experience, my knowledge, my scientific rigor, sometimes very scrutinizing, and my voice to make sure that the capital that they raise goes to those technologies, the development of those technologies and companies that can actually create an impact for the world and for the environment for years to come. So with that, I am going to pass it on to our illustrious panel. And I'm going to ask of them to introduce themselves. And if you can, please tell me something that you are actually proud of that you do in your personal, professional life. Of course, only if you want to share it, because I know that those things can get a little too personal and intimate sometimes. So, and I actually picked you in this. It was just not girl, boy, because Chris goes the first one alphabetically.
All right. Well, thank you. Thanks for having me here. My name's Chris Kanik. I'm the CEO and founder of SmartCups. And SmartCups is a sustainability-driven technology company that allows for the printing of ingredients on surfaces. We eliminate liquid from consumer products, reducing storage transportation requirements, and therefore reduction of carbon footprint. One thing that I'm proud of is I'm a father of 3. That is my number one job outside of being CEO. And the gift of being able to develop a technology that's able to help so many people with medications and nutrition. And so one thing that I've done recently is start a campaign where I travel around the United States and now in other countries, distributing nutrition and medications to the underprivileged, socioeconomically disadvantaged. So.
Thanks, Chris. Kate, second alphabetically. I'm using your first names.
Thanks, Marta. Thanks for having me here today. Really appreciate it. My name's Kate Sixt. I'm the Principal Director for Biotechnology at the Department of Defense. And I think what I would focus on for something that I'm proud of is that as we work in our efforts, there's a large effort in the Department of Defense and throughout the U.S. government to stand up biomanufacturing within the country. And one of the efforts that we have surrounding that is thinking about how we do that in a sustainable manner, such that in that case, you're looking at, in many regards, getting feedstocks in, so food feedstocks, and ensuring that those food feedstocks that go in for making products don't actually take away from food that people need, and that there's accessibility to seeds for people who have rights to seeds. There are rights to seeds. There are rights to all of those aspects, so that we actually go through this with planning and understanding that we can change the entire economy and the balance. And so how do we use data-driven analysis to help us understand that so that we make the right choices with it? Thanks.
I love, Leah, let's not solve a problem by creating another one. Right?
That's right.
Staff?
Thank you, Marta, and thank you, Marta and Z, for inviting me to be on this panel. I'm honored to be here with some excellent co-panelists. I'm Stafford. I go by Staff, the co-founder and chief technology officer of Air Company. Air Company, we're based in New York, and we turn carbon dioxide, water, and electricity into sustainable aviation fuel or jet fuel. And one of the things that I'm most proud of professionally is that one of the challenges that sustainable fuels companies face is getting off the ground and getting a product in the market. In order to compete with fossil fuels, you have to build things to massive scales and invest billions and billions of dollars. And it's just too early to do that with all the technologies that are available today. That's why we still are dependent on fossil fuels. So one of the things that I'm most proud of that my business was able to execute on was we actually got a handful of products into market, not our fuel products though, but using the same chemistry that we use to make our fuel. We became a little bit notorious for this. We actually made and we sell vodka. This is a little nip of the vodka, airplane size, so I could carry it on. And we sell perfume, because if you think about gasoline and other fuels, you pay $2 to $3 per gallon, for those fuels at the pump on a good day. But vodka, premium vodka, is $450 or so per gallon, and those little bottles of fragrance you see at duty free are around $20,000 a gallon. So that helps us de-risk the technology and scale it up to be able to eventually get to that size that we can really have a meaningful impact on sustainability and on climate change.
Thanks. You can tell that staff doesn't drive, by the way, because $2 to $3 a gallon, no.
That's
especially
true,
in New York.
You can tell I live in New York City.
New York, by the way.
$6 in California.
New York is like $7, New York
Is it?
City.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. At least it was like that when I left, and that was before COVID, so I can't imagine now. Anyway, well, thanks very much to all of you. That was very inspiring already to begin with. So, when people hear the word sustainability, it means very different things to different people, right? And I wanna start by poking a little bit our panelists on when you saw the title of this panel, the Go Green to Make Green, the true meaning and the business behind sustainability, what came to your mind?
Well, sustainability to me means something different than what it probably means to everybody else. Sustainability to me is not a buzzword, it's not a trend. Sustainability is my business. But to me, sustainability is more than just a polluted ocean or plastic around a turtle's neck. Sustainability to me, why do we even care about the planet? Why do we even care about preserving the environment? It's to preserve human life. And so for me, when we talk about sustainability, I'm thinking about caring about the planet, but caring about human beings. and extending lifespans, improving the quality of life for human beings on this planet. And that's what I'm trying to do with SmartCups in efficient and sustainable distribution of micronutrients and medications with this technology.
Excuse me. Yeah, I actually remember when I brought this up when we were preparing for the panel, and I said, to me, it's about at least leaving the planet in a better, in the same or a better condition. And when that we found it, right? And when Chris said that, I'm like, wow, that really goes so much far beyond, right? It's about making better communities stuff. What's your thought there?
I mean, I think sustainability can mean, it's overall a good term, right? Because it can mean environmental sustainability, economic sustainability. It can mean, sustainability from a security perspective, making sure that you can sustain your operations. There are a lot of different ways that you can look at sustainability. I think I kind of break that out into operational sustainability, climate, so environmental sustainability, and economic sustainability. So if you need to at least have 2 out of 3. Ideally, you have 3 out of 3. And that's kind of one of the things that guides what we do at Air Company in my business. Making sure that we have economic sustainability, operational sustainability, and then also environmental sustainability, which in a lot of ways comes from having those other 2.
Okay, so having all that together, what do you think that then the result of all of that can be, and what does sustainability mean to you?
Yeah, so I think I would take sustainability and link it up with its linguistic counterpart of sustainment and what that might mean. The Department of Defense obviously thinks a lot about sustainment because it needs to sustain operations, and so it has logistics concerns and needs. But our entire country has sustainment needs. There are things that we would like to continue to be able to do and to buy and to have that really are part of our way of life. And our economic security rests, and our democracy rests on that economic security. So sustaining that is actually linked very closely to sustainability. If you have that sustainability cycle, excuse me, that allows you to preserve the environment and preserve those rights that we have in that aspect, we also can pull that in for sustainment to be able to continue to have the things that we would like and have access to them because we make them here.
And that actually is a great segue for the next, and I'm gonna continue with you then. How do you make it profitable then? How do you make green profitable? And how can you use that to compel more companies and people to do that sustainable sustainment right?
Well, one of the aspects that we have in industry, right, is waste. So taking care of our waste is actually a huge issue. And so whenever we build within any industrial complex, you always have waste on the other end. And so being able to use that waste as a starting point to make new things. So really waste reclamation. What can you pull out of that waste? And microbes are exquisitely adapted to be able to pull things out of lots of stuff. That's what they do. So that's how they eat, and you can adapt them to those. So it's really going after those waste streams and understanding that. And we talk about a circular economy, and it's somewhat related to that, but it's really thinking about engineering those microbes to pull out waste. And then if the microbes are taking care of some of your waste for you, that's actually a lot less cost. So there's less environmental impact. You don't have regulatory issues because that waste is taken care of. But you also don't have to actually pay to get rid of that waste or to ship it somewhere else where it's now somebody else's problem, but still ours.
Yeah. Chris, I see you nodding.
She said microbes. We actually did a piece of work where we printed those microbes in garbage bags so that they would activate in the landfills and then eat the waste. So they would actually start to activate. So that's a long story.
Awesome.
Yeah. So.
Did the bags smell bad though?
No, because we can print fragrances in there as well.
Oh, okay.
And so unleash it. how do you make sustainability profitable, right? How do you get a company to do that? That's my business, sustainability, right? Been working on this for 11 years, hurdles, trying to scale up a technology, innovate. Haven't found an ingredient I can't print, haven't found a surface that I can't print on. Nobody gives a shit, right? Nobody
Pun
gives a
intended.
shit. Yeah. I can ship 5,000 printed energy drinks cross country for $60. Monster can't do that. Red Bull can't do that. Coke, Pepsi, they can't do that. I can do that.
They don't wanna.
Yeah. And it's not until I start talking about the cost benefit and their margins that they start getting interested in that. But marketing sustainability is the most important part, right? Because no one really gave a crap, right, about SmartCups until a chef with a British accent with no science background says you're going to change the world. And then people start going, oh shit, wow, SmartCups, this is awesome. And I love Gordon Ramsay. He's a great guy.
He was on his TV show, by the way.
But that's the reality of it. So you really need to market and create these use cases that can be promoted out. And so it's a slippery slope. But my whole business is sustainability. I can undercut every beverage manufacturer, every consumer product company in the world, and extend those cost savings to the consumers by simply not shipping water and reducing unnecessary packaging.
Yeah, sometimes I realize I've worked in a lot of corporations myself, and I realize that the interest of the corporation gets on the way of reducing the cost and finding the value in waste and going to that circle, and not to mention the fact that the infrastructure and logistics has to change so much. How are they going to do all of that, given to, and this is where I'm going to really show my cynical self, that most people that are making those choices, and they are not going to be enough time in their positions that it's worth for them to do that, because they rather get the profitable end of the year bonus, right? So
It's an agenda, and if the agenda doesn't fit the timeline, it gets poo-pooed.
that's why I love animals, Anyway, staff,
Well, I think
tell us.
I think it all comes down to technology. You need to develop new technologies, whether it's SmartCups technology, whether it's microbial technology, whether it's our technology, that is better than what's out there and more sustainable than what's out there and solves a key problem for a customer. Now, that could be for some of these large corporates. The problem is their consumers want them to be more sustainable. That's not always the pain point, but that's a common pain point among these large dinosauric companies. The challenge that you then face is being able to scale that technology appropriately and bring that technology to market in a way that'll bring value to those customers. And that always requires additional investment. And that then ties into, if you're a technology company, how do you get the customer traction? How do you get from point A to point B? This is why we make vodka as a jet fuel company. How do you get from point A to point B, where you have a new technology, you have a technology that's developed, and you need to be able to get that to your consumers. And I think the vodka that we have in our perfume products are a very, it's actually kind of a tried and true method, where you have a luxury product for folks that is at a higher price point, or it's for people who are less sensitive to cost, that you then launch before you launch your mass production model. Tesla did it very well with the Roadster, which was a fancy car for rich people, for those of you who remember or may have had a Tesla Roadster. But it helped them learn how to manufacture on a large scale. And it helped Tesla get, arguably the most successful clean tech company. It helped Tesla get from where they were in the early 2010s to where they are today, where I think I've seen 2 Teslas drive by since we started this, drive by on the bridge over there since we've started this panel. And that's really the important part of bridging the gap with new technology, because ultimately, not just to convince Coca-Cola to be more sustainable, but also for national security, we need to develop innovative new technologies to stay ahead of competitors and to stay ahead of the curve.
I just want to say,
please.
just to expound on what you just said, SmartCups started as a drug delivery system for patients who suffer from dysphagia. We launched with an energy drink. Next month, we're going to unveil a line through a licensing deal globally of printed pet supplements. So you have to get those proof of concepts, and you have to get that revenue generation to continue the other work that's more beneficial for sustainability. So I understand the need to sell vodka.
Not just vodka.
And not just selling vodka. See, I used to work for a luxury consumer products company, and it is very easy for those companies to trick the consumer into paying $300 for a skincare potion that is no different than the $30 jar, and that's probably when I'm going to stop talking before I get in trouble. I've seen the formulas, and
skincare formulas are a scam? What? An overcharge? No.
No, they're not a scam. They trick the consumer. It's not a scam.
No, that's not it.
Yeah, but I'd like to go a little further back into investment in technology. How do you get those investors? Because the one thing that I hear all the time lately, particularly post-COVID, is that investment money is very hard to come by.
That's actually a very timely question that you're asking me, because I'm in the middle of a capital raise right now.
Any VCs in the room, please?
I took my capital raise. So in 2011, I met my one partner, my financial partner, sat in his office, showed him powdered alcohol that I had made in my kitchen by making the world's crudest spray dryer with a frying pan and some paper clips and some coffee filters.
You and I have to get in the kitchen sometime.
Yeah.
I'm telling you, because all the formulas I make for cosmetics are in my kitchen.
Well, yeah, and I don't know if you want to hang out with me in the kitchen, because I did blow up my kitchen. I caused a really bad fire.
Maybe not there.
Yeah, but
we can get some fire extinguishers in the fire department on call.
Some
okay.
PPE and
Yeah.
But I sat in this guy's office, showed him the powdered alcohol, showed him why the government's never going to let you sell powdered alcohol, the printing technology, how it solves this problem, and all these other, from antibiotics, vaccinations, printing mouthwash, printing every product. He shook my hand. The next day, he wired money into my personal bank account without an entity or anything. And that was in 2013. In 2022, I bought him out after 9 years, bought him out, and I went into a capital raise, started going to try to raise money. Nothing. And everybody smelled blood in the water and essentially was trying to steal my company from me. And I said, you know what? I've never done anything traditionally. I'm going to take my capital raise on Start Engine. Mm-hmm. So I did my capital raise on Start Engine. Luckily, the finale of Gordon Ramsay's Food Stars airs, and we raised a little over $2.5 million within 24 hours. And we're we're doing our round 2 right now. It's been a week, and we've raised close to $500,000. And our goal is to raise 3.8 so that we can open up our second facility, because we're anticipating that by the end of this year, we're gonna need more capacity. And it's costly. I've never received $1 from the government, even though politicians love to parade me around California. Small Business of the Year, 2 years in a row, congressional award. By the way, when I die on my tombstone, I wanted to say that I convinced a Republican congresswoman to admit that sustainability is real and that climate change is real.
There are many of them, actually.
Yeah.
There are many of them.
And so, but then the conversation goes, hey, what can I do for you? A grant, some funding, crickets. And so I've had to figure out how to fund innovation up to $20 million. And as you know, innovation and developing new technologies is not fucking cheap. It costs money. You want to create change? You want to go compete against the big boys that dump billions and billions of dollars into infrastructure? You have to have funds. And so until the VCs and the private equity people actually get serious about their sustainability, it's going to be very tough. It's going to be, and you're going to have to think outside the box, as I have with Start Engine and other platforms like that.
I'm going to take all this back to regeneration because I see them, and as an advisor, I believe that it is being done the right way, and we're definitely working on those companies. But I do see a lot of hurdles that, honestly, I'm a scientist. All of that stuff just doesn't make any sense to me. But I see that more often than not, you have to have so many things for a VC to invest.
Yeah.
That, it's like what now millennials call FOMO, which is something that we've had for, since the dawn of times. It is what venture capitalists have, right? They don't want to be the first one. And we have a friend that always says that he's actually in investments and finance, and he says, nobody wants to be the first one, but everybody wants to be the first in being second, right? So
yeah. Or they'll try to trick you into giving away your company because they see the dollar signs.
And that I always say too, angel investors, they will clip their wings for a share of your company, right? So, and a lot of the stuff that you said, I'm sure that Kate will like to go next and talk about what the government can do, and will continue to do.
Yeah, thanks. I really feel for the companies right now. I think that there's, especially within a tech space, and we see it substantially within biotechnology, that VC capital just does dry up in biotechnology, that's common whenever the markets are tough. And so there's a lot of companies struggling. We see these companies, and most of them are small. They're startups. Biotech is inherently, we have large companies, we have the mid-size, but most of them are small companies. The innovation is exquisite in these folks, but they're working on the smallest of margins to be able to get by, and so they need those injects of capital. Yet that is where those really great innovations come forward. And so we see it for sure in pharma. We know that there's a lot happening in the pharma space in biotechnology in the US. But now we see it in industrial manufacturing. So bioindustrial manufacturing, where we're making materials, making fuels, making things, that the innovation in these companies is really, it's really astounding. And from the government perspective and the administration perspective, we see this as timely because we know that we could lose these companies and lose that innovation and the edge that we could have within biotechnology and maintaining that edge. So what we've been doing then is working to build the bioindustrial manufacturing capacity across the United States. So these small startups can take their innovations, scale them. You can't scale biology like you can scale chemistry. It doesn't scale in the same way. We have to innovate that as it goes along. And I take it back to the way it was when we had semiconductors and lithography, and we made advances in that. And we actually had to learn lithography as we moved forward and moved semiconductors forward. We have to do that with bioindustrial manufacturing as well. So the government has been putting money towards building capacity throughout the United States. And we just launched our first investment in that, our first call for papers on that, and that closed 3 days ago. So it was really exciting. It was a great response. We're so enthusiastic and inspired by the companies and what they're bringing, and so having that government role in it this is the place when you have a new technology, when VC won't fill it. But we need it, and we need to scale, and we know what we need to do here to build it here. That is a role for the government to come in and bring some of that and add some of that capital to de-risk some of it, so that hopefully we will. The goal is to get those second, lots of people who want to be second, right? Yeah. If the government comes first with that. So that's where our investments are right now. But it's super exciting to watch this technology grow. It's really been, and it's really fun to hear what both of you are doing in your spaces and bringing that forward.
Yeah. One thing that, see, Chris, I totally get it with what you said, right? Then if I'm doing so great, why don't you give me a grant or funding, right? Unfortunately, because I am a contractor for the government, and I hear companies say, well, I have this technology and I know that you need this product. Why don't you give me money? Unfortunately, we have to go through the process of creating funding opportunities, right? Yeah. And those have to come from an executive order. Then Congress has to give the money. Then we have to, from that executive order, we have to filter it down to more, specific and focused objectives, and then work on creating that funding opportunity that you need to apply. And we know that it is not easy to get funding from the government because of the process, but in my experience, loans from a bank are not that easy. No. And investors, again, they will clip their wings for a share of your company. With government money, you get to keep it. You get to keep the assets for the most part, and most of the times that you get to acquire with that money, and you'll have to return the money.
Yes, and two things I want to say on that. One frustrating anecdote. So I did apply for a government grant with an agency. We went through the entire process. We made the finals. And the reviewer, I read, we didn't get it. The reviewer, I was reading the comments, said, not commercially feasible. And I called the agency and I said, what is this about? Did this reviewer not see that we've sold over $1 million this year, that we're commercially successful, that I have Jenny McCarthy and Mike Tyson wearing SmartCups shirts, that we're in the marketplace? And then it's just laziness at that point. So I got frustrated and they said, well, we don't think that this is commercially feasible. I'm doing it. But you're just reading the words and you're not doing the extra work to actually see everything that I've put together. And the other part, and I'm actually proud to announce that we actually just signed a deal with a branch of the military to develop products for rations and MREs. So we're really excited about that because I think that's where the bigger picture is going to go, providing micronutrients, electrolytes, calories to our soldiers in a sustainable, lightweight fashion. I think that's going to, but that's a longer project.
As long as they have water where they are, right?
What's that?
As long as they have water where they are.
That's right.
Sometimes those
water.
things are hard.
I can add to that, actually.
And I actually wanted to also give you the opportunity about investments and where do those come from and how to get them and how tough or not it is. But yeah, please go ahead.
Well, my experience was actually kind of similar to yours in that I had applied for every SBIR, every funding opportunity you can imagine for my technology in 2017 and 2018, and got tons of rejections. The DOE had calls. We applied over and over and over again, constantly got rejections. Raised a very, very, very modest amount of money. Me and my co-founder sold our houses and put our life savings into this business. I made the first bottle of this in my garage. And the thing that ended up getting us traction, which was super surprising, came from a government agency that hasn't yet been mentioned on this panel, but I think is a critically important government agency and one of the most important in the United States, from NASA. And they had a competition called the Carbon Dioxide Conversion Challenge, where they asked chemists and the general public, it was open to anybody, to turn CO2 into glucose in an entirely abiotic process. So you're not allowed to use any sort of biological organism. And I didn't think that I had a chance at this at all, but it was a Hail Mary pass to try to win it. And we ended up, after it was a multi-stage competition, but we ended up winning the number one prize. And it was an unrestricted prize. It wasn't a grant that had the red tape that you get with with things like SBIRs and STTRs. Those are small business innovation grants that every branch of the government gives out. But that's really what got us the traction to then win things downstream from that. And so I think that was part of NASA's Centennial Challenges office. One of the things that NASA does that I appreciate that I think the Department of Defense does very well, but other branches of the government don't necessarily do well, is NASA for even a few $100,000 prize, they flew NASA officials to our facilities and tested every single piece of our process. They tested, they wanted the certificates on all of our feedstocks. They wanted it to see exactly what was happening in our process with very rigorous due diligence. And I think that the level of due diligence that NASA did then got other government agencies more comfortable with us. Because there's a lot of, frankly, there's a lot of bullshit out there. You need to convince your customer, whether that customer is the government or whether it's a large commercial entity. You have to convince your customer that you're legit. And for us at Air Company, the first real proof point for us came from NASA. Funny enough, you got to go to outer space to deploy technology that's beneficial here on Earth.
Validation's key. Validation.
And
Adoption
funding. Funding.
is so important.
Well, the funding out of this opportunity was small. The phase one was $50K. So it wasn't a huge amount of money that NASA was giving out for their CO2 conversion challenge, but it was really just the validation of the technology, which then let us go for much larger opportunities in the future that we were then able to win. Also, it's good to be able to say, all right, well, who's your reference for this? Talk to NASA.
Yeah, but not just funding to you. The NASA has to be very well funded to send the people to
Absolutely.
Make sure that the technology is right.
I will always say fund NASA.
There's a lot of people working on those funding opportunities. We know that, right? That there is a lot of people working on that. And to your comment of laziness, I'm going to take that back. And I'm going to make sure, because I actually am in a position of, I don't evaluate proposals, but I do choose the people that do. So I'm going to make sure that we give them more time so they can do that. And
Thank you.
just also to defend them, sometimes it's very difficult for people that have been in the government their entire lives to understand how commercial something is. That's not an excuse, though.
I would say, I would say that the thing that brought the most value and made me feel a lot better actually about reviews, and even if I've had reviews that were negative, just made me feel better about the constructive criticism, was in-person diligence. I think it's critically important for people to show up on site, see something's real.
Yeah.
You show that you're not just a handful of folks, sitting in a warehouse somewhere. And actually see that see the product, see the technology actually work. And while it is expensive for the government to do in-person diligence, you can get flights to just about anywhere in the U.S. And it's I think it's just critically important for reviewers or other people who are evaluating investment opportunities to show up in person. You'd be so shocked at some of the biggest funds in the entire world don't even show up to do their own in-person diligence. And I would want to, if I were to put hundreds of millions of dollars into something, I would want to be there and see it with my own eyes.
That's why I always offer golden tickets to come to Willy Wonka's chocolate factory and see my systems and the machines that we built and how we start and how we scaled, so that people don't think it's all fugazi.
Okay.
Well, it is
I
helpful
love that.
too. It's helpful too, especially because we may have different expertises, right? But most of the time our expertise is not in your specific technology, right? We may have certain tech expertise, we may have some of that training, right? But when you get down to it, so when you're able to see it up close, and if you're offering chocolate too, so I think that, but it really
Or vodka.
Or vodka. Wow, okay.
Under $25. Under $25.
Exactly.
I actually left with a few samples.
But really the that ability to see it and they're really it feels trite, but the seeing is believing, that we can, when we walk in there and you can and there's also the aspect too, which is very enjoyable too, of seeing and feeling the excitement when you visit the companies and to know how much you've all put into it, right? That, for me, I think that's actually one of my greatest joys in this position, is being able to do that.
Yeah, no, I'm definitely going to take all of these comments back and make sure that at least we bring up the fact that how about pay a visit to those that are like the finalists, right? Because it's difficult. You also have to understand that sometimes it's very difficult because from a government standpoint, it could be perceived as favoritism. So why are you visiting this and you're not visiting that? So we got to be very strategic and very conscious about those choices, right, from taxpayers' standpoint. Anything else that anyone wants to say about investments up front or technology development? Because if not, I'll go to the next point, which is, I'm excited about hearing about this, by the way.
Well, if anybody, I'm going to just do a shameless plug. If anybody's interested in investing in SmartCups, you go to our Start Engine page. Minimum investment's $250. I guarantee it.
I did a couple of shy plugs anyway, so don't worry about
there you
it. You know, if anyone wants to listen to my podcast. Anyway, so green noise and greenwashing, they are very common terms these days, right? So I would like to hear, and I'm going to start with you, Kate. What are things that you hear, and now that you are actually in a position of evaluating, right? Those things that really make you want to punch a wall or punch their faces because you know that they are just trying to trick you with their greenery stuff.
Right. So it wouldn't necessarily be that I feel that people are trying to trick me necessarily with it, but the idea, I think, and the assumption that because something is bio-based, that it is green or sustainable. Bio-based are these chairs, right? They're made from trees. And so it's the labeling without actual standards and metrics behind them that say that something has a sustainability or is providing you something that the consumer thinks that they're getting in the end when they're not. And so that could, transfer over into, funding things too, but it's really and I think that's partly a requirement on consumers, and it's also an understanding of standards development that what labels are allowed to go on things and what aren't. So what is bio-based versus what is something that is actually bio-manufactured? Those are two potentially very different things. And also, what is biodegradable? Really, everything is biodegradable eventually, right? So yes, we could call it all, but what does it really mean to mean that it will break down, right, quickly, and not leave a footprint? And what is a footprint, right? So what are those standards that we put in place where we really say these are our values and these are what we want to get to and aim for, and then labels that come along with those that are more productive, and aren't just there as a placebo, I would say.
Okay.
Is that too strong?
Oh yeah, no, I love it. I gotta tell you something that it is pretty striking. I heard that one of the members of the board of directors of a very well-known beverage company thought that they had this bio-based plastic bottle, and he thought that it was biodegradable. So that tells you, like, the confusion. If that happens at that level, how are you going to, as a company, properly explain to the consumer what is what, right? Chris, tell us.
Where do I start?
Whatever you
from
want.
Battery-powered cars,
Oh.
I guess. That's kind of a scam in and of itself. And a problem was caused and a secondary business was created to solve that problem. So SpaceX, in my opinion, is just a glorified waste management company. I got one laugh in the back, thank you.
I laugh too, but I have a microphone, so I have to be a little quiet about it.
Let's see, this concept of carbon credits that companies buy and sell to each other, and the government incentivizes the companies to do this. So it's kind of a crock of shit, in my opinion, and it's nonsense. Then And I think the overall problem is, and going back to the big companies and a CEO that thinks a plastic bottle is biodegradable, you go to most people that are, and this is what I see, because sometimes people will go on the internet and say SmartCups is greenwashing because they'll see a PLA cup or something like that, and they're missing the larger picture, right? The average person that is passionate about the environment doesn't have a foundation to really understand the concept of sustainability, biodegradation, all this other stuff. They get their science.
The right time, biodegradation.
Yeah, and they get their science from Facebook memes and Twitter posts. And that's not.
TikTok.
And TikTok, right? And that's not a foundation. What we need to do is a better job at like educating the public. The problem is that the big corporations don't want to do that.
No.
Because they sit in their offices, they've got billions of dollars in infrastructure. The biggest biggest beverage companies and consumer product companies are just bottlers and distribution. So if I have a technology that says, hey, I'm going to eliminate liquid and I'm going to reduce the number of trucks on the street, you think they're going to support me?
No.
No, corporate sabotage is real.
You're gonna bankrupt them.
That's right. So they don't like me. They don't want to see SmartCups be successful. And so I have to do a good job of explaining to the consumers, explaining to the general public, the people that are passionate about the environment, hey, this is a better solution. It's not the best, but it's better than what we have right now. And if I say, hey, the average Coca-Cola truck that could deliver 100,000 units of a 12-ounce can can now deliver 31 times more, it freaks people out, you know? So.
Well, you know, the bottlers of Coca-Cola would go south, so it's not just geographically.
I'm not a big fan of the polar bears. I don't know if you catch them.
The Coca-Cola polar bears.
Yeah.
But here's one thing, though, that you mentioned. Big corporations don't want to really educate the consumer. With the example that I gave you, it's actually not that they don't want to, it's that they don't know themselves.
They don't.
Right?
And they sit down and they throw marketing dollars at whatever bullshit sustainability narrative they want to promote, and they sell people on it. It's just fancy marketing. It's just.
Oh yeah, no, and I've heard also like these big PR campaigns that are meant for just produce 1,000 bottles so you can get like a really good press release out of that. Oh yeah, no, I've seen them quite a few times. Stuff.
So if anybody here in the audience, I want a show of hands. Do you remember the last time, or do you remember seeing a "we're being green" advertisement or something like that from an oil and gas super major? We actually got a good amount of hands there. There we go. Yeah. So that's just proof right there that there's a plenty of greenwashing going on when you look at the overall investments from the energy industry in green assets versus like heavily polluting assets. Even things where you could easily just add a couple of modules onto your refinery to be a little bit greener. That's not an economic decision that's being made. And they'd rather put that money into an ad campaign of, you know, some bullshit, essentially.
Yeah, I mean, go to a tobacco website. It looks like Girl Scouts of America. And I'm like, you guys kill people for a living. That's your business.
Well, Girl Scout cookies are not exciting.
No, they're not any better. That's right.
Hey.
The one takeaway from this panel is Girl Scouts and tobacco, the same shit. Screw the Girl Scouts.
But you know, package them in recycled paper
that's
and
right.
you're fine.
Yeah. Sustainably delicious.
So as a society, I think we need to move some of these larger corporations. I would say the ones that are most guilty of greenwashing are the large corporations that are doing kind of business as usual and putting more money into the marketing budget to talk about how green they are being than they are putting into the actual assets that could make them green. And so I think that's where we have to. That's the greenwashing we have to worry about as a society, really. That enables kind of the business as usual to keep going on. And that's what I think a lot of, again, it all comes down to technology and innovation. There's new technology, new innovation that's out there, like what we're doing, like what SmartCups is doing, that's able to solve a customer pain point. It's able to solve a customer pain point independent of that, and it's really that's really where we need to take businesses like ours and grow them to a point where they can really compete with the business as usual that is polluting.
Yeah, I'm looking at the our clock here, and I see 10 minutes left. So I like to open for questions. The microphone is there where this gentleman is now standing. If anyone besides him wants to ask a question, please start lining behind him. I know it's kind of weird, but it's like are you waiting for Girl Scout cookies? Right?
Yes.
Go ahead.
Thomas Harms, Radio France International. Is the green industry and sustainability the new El Dorado, or is it the Far West?
Who wants to take that?
Because I came here, I was like, oh, seems to me like it's the future, it's the El Dorado, it's growing. And listening to you, I was like, oh, but it seems to me that it's the Far West.
I think that he was pointing at you.
Yeah, he was pointing at me. I caused this problem.
No, I think that.
I think overall, the narrative is being controlled by the bigger corporations that have dumped billions of dollars into infrastructure and want to maintain their infrastructure. This concept of selling and buying carbon credits is bullshit. I think the narratives, and it's just creative marketing. And so you have to look at the smaller, let's call out the elephant in the room. The big companies don't do shit anymore.
No.
Right?
I agree.
They let the smaller guys assume the risk, and if they have any inkling of success in the marketplace, they just scoop them up.
They grow by acquisition. They don't
That's
grow
right.
organically anymore.
I've been offered a lot of money by some big companies that I can't name because I don't want to get sued. And I've turned them down because essentially they want to take the technology and shelve it. They don't want it to disrupt the status quo.
Or they want to make it into what they already have, adapted
Correct.
to their current infrastructure.
Yeah. And that's why I have to give a lot of credit to a company like Capana, that's a global pet product company, because they're the ones that license the technology to create printed pet products that they're launching next month. They've really committed to sustainability. They truly understand the concepts of sustainability. Now, there are some other problems that the technology is going to solve, but they're not a manufacturer. They don't manufacture anything. So that's why they're more inclined. I could get on a call with one beverage company, and they'll poo-poo me. One very famous polar bear company gets on a call with me every 6 months just to shit all over me, shit on SmartCups. And then I jump on another call with another beverage company that doesn't, their specification is not in bottling liquid, and they go, you guys are truly sustainable. You guys are where we want to go. And so you see that dichotomy. It's just all based on agendas. And until we get honest and we call out the elephant in the room, it's going to be a follow-us. It's not going to be the El Dorado.
Yeah, and I think that there's a lot of things too, to build up on that fundamentally need to change, right? So if we continue this absorption of the big corporations, of the small technology developer ones, are we really going to progress into that direction, right? So kudos to you for not falling under I'm just going to bank a lot of, get a lot of ka-ching money here and retire to an island. And what I did was great, but now it's not going anywhere, right? I've seen it from the corporation side, like many smaller companies being bought out just to be drawn to the ground, honestly. So
I think, if I may, that it also has to do with our values. So, and values evolve and change over time. And I think, as opposed to saying that we're in a specific space or not right now, maybe we're on a trajectory, right? And I think when I look at that trajectory of, where I'd like it to go, it's thinking about the shape of that curve, right? You can aim, we're at a point, right? And you can aim that curve a lot of different places. So do you want to, where do we want to be with it? And then how do we think about shaping values and norms in a society towards that a definition of green that actually makes sense.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Steph, and do you have anything to share?
I mean, there definitely is a lot of aspects of Wild West to it today. You know, I think one of the things that's important is to look at, you know, you might not find El Dorado on day one, but you can find a few places where you can drill down, find a value proposition that really resonates with a customer that also is green. And that's what we do with the Department of Defense. One of the cool things about making fuel from greenhouse gases or making fuel from carbon dioxide and water and electricity is that carbon dioxide's everywhere. That's kind of our whole climate change problem. And we have too much of it in the air, but it's pretty ubiquitous. And so with our technology, you can make fuel just about anywhere. And it is inherently sustainable. So, you know, if you're able to find applications like that, you know, for our application with the Department of Defense, it's being able to generate fuel in contested environments, so you don't need to send fuel into a battlefield, for example, in order to have, you know, operational sustainability. You know, but for other companies, there are other places where you're going to find, you know, where you're going to find opportunity in kind of the Wild West of sustainability out there. Yeah, El Dorado is when, you know, climate change is solved, all of the sustainable, you know, technologies are deployed, and everybody's, you know, living in harmony. That's a little far off still.
Yeah, I don't know about that. I don't know, because we always find a way to create a new problem. Right?
True, yeah.
Going back to the beginning. Go ahead, please.
Thank you. So you all talk about the importance of scale and scaling, but I have a question for Kate. When you mentioned that biotech doesn't scale like chemistry, could you elaborate on that, please?
Yeah, definitely. So as we scale up in biotechnology and biomanufacturing, so chemistry tends to scale linearly. I can get that one out. So essentially your scale-up process is a different, what you can do at a smaller scale, you can move to a larger scale. It's not completely linear, but it's for the most part in that way. Whereas when you scale up with biotechnology, you've actually engineered the microbes to be able to perform at a small scale, and then at a somewhat larger scale, and then at an even larger scale. So it's the engineering of the microbes that went into it. So the way that you would engineer them is going to be different when you're moving to larger scales in many cases. You may need different genes. You may need different, you may need to put different precursor molecules in, and there will be different downstream processing. So it's those sorts of aspects where the scaling isn't just, okay, I take it and it's at 1 liter, now it's at 100 liters, now it's at, you actually may have to change your microbe itself. And when you go in these companies, when companies are working just at the lab scale, they haven't done the research at the larger scale because they don't have a place to actually do that, right? They need a large thing to put a microbe in and see how it performs. Does that make sense? Okay.
Yeah, no, thanks for that, because actually I'm very excited about seeing how that pans out in the biomanufacturing space, because even though chemistry can be a scale up linearly, it shouldn't, because we are now in a situation where the linear scale has brought up to a very inefficient process, right? Yeah. So I can't wait to see how some of those companies scale up and put it back into chemistry.
Hey.
We have one last question.
A lot of your discussion about the big companies is that it seems like you believe that they're just talking about going like the greenwashing aspect, that they're not really doing much. But all these big companies have all these carbon reduction goals and targets that they've announced very publicly. So do you believe, do you think they're just going to be moving targets and that they won't get to like X number of reduction by 2030, or like won't that eventually cost them financially in terms of investment and things like that?
There's a lot of creative ways to do carbon accounting. A lot of very creative ways. There are no standards really. There's no norms. Life cycle analysis is is really the study of how many greenhouse gas emissions does your process have from cradle to grave. There's not really a lot of boundaries that are set around life cycle analyses that are kind of widely accepted, and it is a complicated problem, to be honest. But yeah, I mean, it is good that there are corporate sustainability initiatives. I will say that it's a step in the right direction. It's not enough, but it's a step in the right direction.
Just check which big company's buying a hemp farm so I can get a carbon credit.
Yeah. Kate, do you have anything on that?
I think it would be, to your point, Steph, too, on the standards that, what you're actually asking for, and I think it's legitimate here, or suggesting, I think, is that you need precision standards and engineering standards within how we do those calculations, right? So having a big company say that they're going to commit to something can actually change the value system and can push a normative system forward in the way that we might want to see it happen. But then you need to have those compensatory pieces on the side that say, okay, but this is how you actually do it, and that's what it really means, right? And that really comes when we talk about engineering standards and precision standards, that's it, right? Getting those models right so that you can actually calculate that and have something on the other side.
Well, we are out of time. I can tell you more about that, by the way, because I see that there is a lot of design by choice under those corporate goals, right? And they tend to, if you start looking at the fine print, they are meant to be met because they leave out the difficult stuff. So, but thank you so much to all of you. I don't know about you all, but I had so much fun just listening to all of you and really interacting and having these very stimulating conversations. So I hope that you all enjoyed so much as I did, and I hope that you all at least learned something today. So thank you.